is disappointing. I think that it like we are in a space where we need a lot of staff positions filled in order to not only make sure that the operations of the city are running smoothly, but that we meet the expectations of our stakeholders, whether they are residents, business owners, visitors. So that's been a bit of a challenge. I think we've seen some very strong, capable people uh, choose other options.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Voices of College Park podcast. I'm Adrienne Murchison. My guest today is Mayor Bianca Motley Broom, and I'm grateful that she took the time to chat with me and reflect on the year in College Park. The year had some twists and turns, and we don't take a deep dive, but we do know that it didn't start out the way that we thought it would. I don't think residents or officials thought the year was going to bring all that it brought. In January, ordinances were passed by council members that limit the mayor's ability to speak during debate on agenda items. Later in the year, she was censured by council for asking questions and trying to get clarity on some items that were being discussed. There are multiple complaints about activities during council meetings and a lack of transparency or perceived lack of transparency, perceived violations of the Open Meetings Act, multiple complaints to the Attorney General's office, lawsuits. There's just a number of things that happened this year. It was quite a year. It's been quite a year. So the mayor does not take a deep dive, but she does reflect on some of the things that happened. And she has a theme that actually had me thinking about my other podcast, which is Let's Start Healing, where I always say we have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. And by coincidence, this is a theme that the mayor brings up about how important it is for College Park to think as one, think of the community as one rather than divided up into what's best for this ward versus another ward, and to engage what's best for residents looking at the city as a whole in terms of an approach. She talks about how important and it has been for residents to be engaged this year and the benefits of that. And I don't remember if I brought this up with you in the past, but in Sandy Springs, which is a city that I covered for years, 10 plus years ago, Sandy Springs had a rezoning, and it took place, discussions and meetings took place over a series of weeks and months. But the rezoning for this mixed use development of luxury apartments, shops, and restaurants was going on without the knowledge of the residents who lived in these two apartment communities that were demolished for this commercial development. And the residents of these apartments, the Chastain and Versailles, were largely Hispanic. Largely, they did not speak English. When I visited with them, it was their middle school children who were translating the conversation. And even if, for the sake of any argument, the city was not trying to hide anything from the residents there, they had no idea that they were being affected by what was going on in City Hall. And again, they were moved out and those apartments were demolished. So, similarly, in College Park, earlier this year, there was rezoning that was approved without public notice. That wasn't the case in Sandy Springs, but it was approved without public notice to residents for the property of Next Era who owns the property for the battery energy storage facility that is planned there in the backyards of longtime retired older residents who live in South Fulton, right on the border. So, just speaking to the point of why it's so essential to be engaged. Before we get to our conversation, I want to share that my next episode will be with Pastor Jesse Sims, the pastor of Mega Faith Center Church. And that is the church that presented the free gas event a few weeks ago, and I had a wonderful conversation with him, and I'm excited about bringing that to you as well. So let's get to Mayor Bianca Motley Broom, a voice of College Park. Welcome, Mayor.
It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your time. And this is a great opportunity to talk to you about a few different things. One is we're obviously coming to the end of the year. And how are you doing? I don't think the year started out the way that you or the public expected in terms of the ordinances that were passed. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. This is an amazing community. College Park is truly such an amazing place with such great residents. I think this year has definitely gone differently than I imagined, for certain. But I think it speaks to the resilience of College Park. I think it speaks to the engagement of our residents in College Park. And I think it also just speaks to how important local government is overall.
Mm-hmm.
This year has challenged us. It really has. But it also shows what is necessary in a democracy for people to not only show up to the ballot box on their assigned day on the first Tuesday in November, but also you've got to know what's going on in your local, state, federal government, but especially on the local and state level. It is such a challenge to find information. I mean, you can open up any national news app and see what's happening on the federal level, right? But knowing what's going on in your local government takes engagement. It takes effort by people. And if you aren't paying attention, things can change very quickly, very, very quickly. So it's up to each one of us to be in that space where we are engaged citizens.
What are you hearing from residents? Is there a common theme that you hear when you talk to residents when you're out and about during the course of a day?
Oh, sure. I think residents want College Park to move forward. They see what's happening in surrounding communities in our sister cities. They love some of what they're seeing in those sister cities, and they want us to have some of that same progress. And we've done a lot of great work. This is coming up on the end of my 5th year, and it's hard to believe that it's been 5 years, but it has been such a ride.
Yeah. I was thinking about, so you're dealing with what you're dealing with the ordinances and the limitation that council members want to put on you speaking, but also when you came into office, you were immediately dealing with the pandemic.
That's right.
So that's a lot of interesting things you might not expect.
Absolutely. I certainly didn't expect COVID. Who did? Even when we had inklings of it in December of 19, this virus that was starting to spread, and we saw news reports, who could have imagined that it would turn our world upside down? And still, we're still dealing with those impacts at the end of 2024. It's changed the way we operate in certain ways.
Right.
We wouldn't be doing this probably in
That's true.
2018, right? This way of this method of communication is so much more commonplace. Who hasn't been on, a Zoom this week, or maybe 5 or 6, right?
Right,
Uh,
right, right.
and so some of those changes have been great. They've forced us to be innovative and adapt, and some of them have been a little bit tougher. But one of the things that for me was a silver lining during the COVID pandemic is that it forced me to have a more intimate knowledge of the inner workings of the city. I had to know how things were operating because of the fact that things were going so poorly for us, that we are so reliant on tourism and travel and hospitality, that I had to really know the ins and outs because of the fact that we're so financially tied to those industries and they were hit so hard during COVID. And I don't know that I would have the same understanding of how the city works on a daily, monthly, yearly basis without the pressures of the COVID pandemic.
Right, right. Well, so will you speak to the transparency questions that come up? You push back a lot during meetings, trying to get clarity for the public, is the way I perceive it. You've mentioned not being informed about things, even this week at this week's meeting, not being informed about things or asking questions about agenda items that the public would want to know. And sometimes you don't get an answer to those questions. So, and as we know, there's lawsuits regarding transparency and your censure and what everything that's taken place. So, would you speak to that a little bit, because it does come down to the public being informed, as you said.
We work for the public, period. We are public servants, and just about everything that we do is subject to public disclosure. Obviously, there are some things that we can talk about in closed session and executive session: real estate, litigation, personnel, cybersecurity. That's it. Everything else, pretty much, we should be an open book. And I don't think there should be any mystery as to how we are going through our process, how we are making decisions and trying to do the work of the citizens of College Park. So I think you've probably seen some frustration throughout the year in regard to that. We had a conversation earlier this week about an alcohol ordinance and the changes that would come if a business owner was either denied a license or lost their license in that appeal process. I found it troubling that we had received the text of the ordinance at 3 o'clock for a meeting that started at 7:30. I have a day job. My colleague, Councilmember Arnold, has a day job, and being expected to digest information in that amount of time is challenging. And also, the public never saw it. The public never had an opportunity to see the ordinance that would change the way that they interacted with our government. I don't think that is where we should be.
Right. And there was a lot of conversation on that item, and it was approved, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And I was surprised because there was so much conversation about it. And so I thought that it would be moved to the next meeting, but it wasn't. It was approved.
It was not. And I said then, I maintain it now. I don't think that's a really great way to do policy.
Yeah.
Because it's a shortcut that A, is unnecessary, and B, leads people to believe that, or it may lead people to think that something else is going on.
Right. Right.
We don't have anything to hide. Period.
Are there things that that City Council got done this year that you are proud of, or gratified that these things got done?
Look, we are always making progress in the city. I think it's the pace of the progress sometimes that can that can be a little frustrating, but we have seen the continuation of the implementation of the pedestrian bridge over Camp Creek Parkway, which will make our community more connected. As the 6 West development takes shape, that will allow not only residents but visitors to interact with all parts of the city. And that's a really exciting development. The fact that we were able to collaborate with East Point, Hapeville, Clayton County, Aerotropolis, the city of Atlanta, and ARC to get the funding to have a trail network that will come off of the Beltline and go into the Flint River corridor and improve access for people to nature. And those are amazing things that are happening in our community. And you see the continued conversations about how we work with our small businesses. And I think that I was saying it to someone else earlier this week, small businesses are the backbone of what we do. We have amazing companies in College Park that people associate with our city. The headquarters of Chick-fil-A is here. We've got a very large Cisco operation here, great large businesses, but the small ones are really our backbone. And so strengthening those relationships and making sure that they're part of the fabric of our community, because they are constantly reaching out, trying to make sure that our community is better. I do one-on-one meetings every month with anyone who wants to come. If you want to come, you can go just call City Hall and set up an appointment. And a business owner came to me this week and said, I actually own 2 businesses in College Park, and I want to help out folks for the holidays and also want to provide a discount on gas at my other business. And so can you help us facilitate that? Mm-hmm. Can you help make that a reality? Heck yeah. Like we want to do that kind of work. And I think that's one of the things that I can do best in this position is connect people to each other, to our government, to see some of those dreams become reality in a way. Like I think of it kind of as like Wonder Twins uniting, right? Like that if we're working together, we can achieve so much more.
And what are you disappointed in not getting done this year as a city council body?
I think that there's what we've accomplished and what I thought we might be able to accomplish, and that gap in between, that unknown to a certain extent, is disappointing. I think that we are in a space where we need a lot of staff positions filled in order to not only make sure that the operations of the city are running smoothly, but that we meet the expectations of our stakeholders, whether they are residents, business owners, visitors. So that's been a bit of a challenge. I think we've seen some very strong, capable people choose other options. And that's always difficult in an organization, but I also have tremendous respect for some of the individuals who have been working tirelessly for our city day in and day out, and we'll get through it. We will.
Yeah.
We absolutely will.
And I don't know if you can speak to this or not about any of the lawsuits, but the residents in the Next Era situation and filing a lawsuit, and even residents complaining about the transparency issue to the Attorney General's office. What do you make of that, and what do you think of those actions?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier in regard to the need in a democracy to actively participate. We're hearing from our residents. They are staying engaged. Mm-hmm. I think that in an ideal world that they wouldn't necessarily have to be this engaged. Mm-hmm. But we've lost some trust. We have. We've lost trust as an organization with a number of our residents. Not everyone, and opinions differ, but there is some lost trust there, and it's really hard to gain trust back once you've lost it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this heightened sense of awareness and involvement that I hope at some point tampers down a little bit, because we gain some of that trust back and they recognize that we're working in a way that is both transparent and orderly, and that gives them some reassurance that we're on the right path.
You mentioned during a recent meeting that you went to the National League of Cities. Do I
Yes,
have that right?
yes, that's right.
And right, and you were mentioning some economic development or something that had me very curious about the way you would like to see College Park develop in building.
Hmm.
And you want to see, well, they were talking about going up in terms of density, which I've heard in other cities.
Yes, and that was in Columbus, Ohio, and the council president and I were on a panel together talking about NIMBY issues, not in my backyard issues, and they went on a very intensive several year campaign essentially throughout the community to talk about these issues. What is good for Columbus, Ohio would not work in College Park, Georgia. And so they have a route for bus rapid transit, and along that route they have increased the opportunity for density to a very, very large extent. I think in Columbus, I believe he said they could only go up 4 or 5 stories prior to these changes, and now I think they can go up to 18. So that's how they are going to create density in the city of Columbus, Ohio. One, as I said before, what works in Columbus would not work in College Park, and for a number of reasons. One, that's not what we're trying to achieve here, that we're making those types of huge changes. They're expecting their population to grow by 1 million people in, I think, less than 20 years. So they've got to anticipate how to accommodate that kind of growth. Also, we have the airport in our city limits. There's only so high we can go. So that approach just would not work here. But what I really took away from it was the fact that it took them 2 years to go throughout the community, to have these conversations, and not only get staff and elected officials on board, but the entire community with what they were trying to do and why. And the importance of strategic communication in that effort. So we are going to be facing a number of developments, and as the city evolves, how do we communicate what we're trying to do to get buy-in from the community? We've got a residential developer lined up for the 6 West project, and what that looks like as the community grows and changes, and still how do we maintain the character of what we have while we envelop new residents and new visitors. That's a challenge, I think, for a lot of communities around the country. But it was a fascinating conversation, because in addition to the two of us, we also had a phenomenal city planner on the panel as well, because planning is key. And when we do comprehensive plans, when we do strategic plans, a lot of times those plans just sit on a shelf. I think the best communities are essentially using them as their Bibles. Once they recognize where they want to go, they tie it back to the principles that they have done in that planning and make sure it aligns with their vision.
Yes, I've seen other cities sometimes hire a consultant firm to come in and with ideas, but also have what they were calling charrettes with
Yep.
the residents.
Mhm.
Is that something that you all have in mind?
Well, we have done charrettes. We did charrettes around 6 West even during the pandemic.
Okay.
That was probably one of the earliest community engagements that we did via Zoom, and it actually worked out very well because and maybe that was sort of timing because everyone was at home and they could just log on, but we got a lot more engagement than we probably would have had if we had done it in person. And again, everybody couldn't go to work. They were just, we were all just hoping for the best and hanging out at home. But that's the public. That's who we work for. They're our bosses. If we're going in a direction that doesn't align with the vision of this community, then we need to reevaluate.
Yeah.
And so finding that level of engagement, making sure that we are using our carefully thought out plans as our North Star is essential if we're really going to be thriving. I mean, I see it. I'm really involved with the Georgia Municipal Association. And so I'm the first vice president. We have 537 cities in the state. And they're all different, but they're all doing great things. I think the best ones are aligning their goals to their planning and making sure that they are deliberate in the steps that they take, not only for, I mean, it reaps benefits in so many different ways, whether it's fiscally, because if you stick to your plan, it's going to be cheaper probably, as opposed to add-ons and all this other stuff and getting distracted with other goals. But again, that trust factor, which is so important between the city and the residents.
Right.
Because if we're doing what we said we were going to do, then you will trust us.
Right.
I mean, it's not rocket science, but yeah, it's a great opportunity to showcase that interaction, that good interaction that can happen between government and residents.
You're going to be on a panel coming up on Aerotropolis.
Yes.
And would you talk about that a little bit, and that how the Flint River project or gateway, is that a part of this? Is that what Aerotropolis is? I'm still trying to get my understanding of that and the Flint River and all that it entails and going under the airport. And it's
wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
About the fact that the second longest river in the state goes underneath the world's busiest and most efficient airport. When you think about that, how they built an airport over a river, it's really quite incredible. But the Flint River actually starts in East Point, but the first part where it's actually visible is in the city of College Park, right behind the Woodward Academy bus parking lot. There's a 7-acre site. Most of it sits in College Park, but some of it is in East Point. And through the industrialization of the area, the headwaters there are not in their natural state. So one of our former employees, Tasha Hall Garrison, who was our community development administrator, worked with Hannah Palmer, who started an organization called Finding the Flint. Hannah has lived in multiple areas across the South Side. She's written several books. Her book, Flight Path, sort of chronicles the fact that every place that she grew up no longer exists due to airport expansion, and what that relationship between her roots and her community really is at this point. But it's a wonderful book. Would highly recommend it. But Hannah set off on a years-long quest to get people to engage more with the river, to understand A, that it was there, and B, that it was a resource, and C, it was a resource that we needed to develop for the benefit of the community. So this 7-acre tract, the goal is to turn it into a nature preserve. It was initially owned by MARTA, and we spent years negotiating to have that property sold to the city of College Park so we could start working with community partners and corporate partners to develop it into a nature preserve. So MARTA has sold it to us. That is absolutely exciting. And I'm thinking about Jeff Parker, the former head of MARTA, who really understood what we were trying to do with the Headwaters property, and was just highly supportive of it. And I love Collie Greenwood. He's amazing. I miss Jeff Parker's leadership too, because I think that he was just a really dynamic individual and moved transit forward in a lot of ways in our community. But sorry, side note there. But, anyway, so
the you said part of it is not in its natural state. What does that mean? Is it got? I did see that video on finding the Flint, and is that where it almost doesn't look like it's a river?
Oh, it doesn't really look like it's much of a river back there most of the time. The banks are lined with concrete, and it's basically, I mean, the river's been channeled in a way that's not exactly natural to its flow. So part of the work that would happen to make this a preserve is to restore it to its natural state so people can come and enjoy it. So students can have essentially an outdoor classroom and learn about science and nature in this amazing environment in the shadow of the airport. Because if you go on the other side, if you've ever done the Finding the Flint tour, fantastic. If you haven't, you really should. When you go on the other side of the airport and see the Flint River start to look a little bit more like a river, there's literally turtles and deer and all of these animals that depend on this ecosystem. And part of what we've been dealing with on the south side is the fact that because the natural contours of the river haven't been honored, it's impacted stormwater. There's a lot of stormwater runoff, and that impacts Clayton County in particular. So if we are doing what we need to do at the top of the river, at the headwaters, it will help stormwater mitigation and management further downstream. So it's an important project. The Headwaters project is really important for so many different reasons. It's a great environmental project because it will have a marked impact on residents who are disproportionately feeling that not only are we dealing with heavier rains and more flooding, this will make an impact.
Now, are those separate projects? The Headwaters project is one part regarding the Flint River, and then this gateway to make it accessible and sort of like a park.
The trail system is a different. The collaboration between ARC, Aerotropolis, East Point, Hapeville, Clayton County, that trail network we've received federal funding for that. And so that's it was part of a Reconnecting Communities grant, and one of the larger ones that this region has seen, which is absolutely amazing that we're even a part of it, north of $50 million. So that will go by the Headwaters Park.
Has work already started on this?
No, we're in the planning phases.
Is this something that might take like 10 years or 5 years, or what are...
Don't quote me on a number of years, but we're moving forward. Okay. I'm hopeful it'll be shorter rather than longer, but we're also dealing with federal funding, which tends to slow things down.
Yeah. And you mentioned a tour. Is that an organized tour, or if a person wants to just go and do a tour this as much as they can?
It is an organized tour. they get a bus, and you get to see various parts of the Flint River, how it touches us in College Park, and then you get to go to Hateville and see it right before it goes underneath the airport. There's a fenced off area on Delta property. So the overall vision is to create green spaces at a lot of different points along the river, so people have that connection and understand how the Flint River is integral to all of us. It's such a resource in South Georgia, and I had the opportunity to go paddling down there. And the idea that the little stream of water that you see in College Park becomes this massive lifeline for a huge swath of our state is just, it's really mind-boggling. And it also just brings home again the importance of what we do up here to make sure that we are protecting the health and the integrity of the river. It matters downstream. It absolutely positively matters for the economic health, the physical health, the well-being of Georgians across the state.
Right. Well, before I let you go, I want to ask you one last question, and that is, with this year, what do you think you've learned about yourself through everything this year?
I've learned so much. I've learned that a sense of humor is essential. Like if you can't laugh, then gosh, you should probably just find something else to do. I've learned the importance of slowing down and embracing the relationships with the people who are important in your life, and taking the time for those relationships so you can be nurtured, and the importance of self-care. Because if you're not good to yourself, you can't be good to everybody else. And so making sure that you are consciously doing the things that are going to renew you, rejuvenate you. I came back from an event last night, and my husband had just gotten home, and I think it was it was probably around 9:30. And he said, "Oh, I had a rough day." He works as a chef, and so he said, I'm sore, and I think I just want to lay here on the couch. I said, you know what? We need to do the things that are going to make us feel better. You go upstairs, take a bubble bath. I'm going to go and get on the rowing machine. We both need to do the things that are going to put us in a better frame of mind, and be intentional about that, and not apologize for that. And that, I think, in turn leads to resilience. And I've certainly learned that I'm resilient. If I didn't know it before, I know it now. And I also know that all of this that we're experiencing, good, bad, indifferent, this is a chapter. It's not the whole book. And I keep that in mind a lot, because things were very, very different a year ago. Things will be different a year from now. And I am always optimistic for not only my own life, but the future of this community, because I really do believe that the best is yet to come.
Yes, thank you so much. One of the reasons I'm so attuned to College Park is because I feel that what goes on there, as you were alluding to or speaking to earlier, can really go on anywhere.
Oh, sure.
So it is so important to pay attention, as you said earlier, to what is going on in your community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the voices that will amplify it are getting silenced. Things were different for you a year ago.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So it's a real shame that we have this hyper focus on the national issues, when what happens on the local and state level really does have the ability to change people's lives overnight.
Right.
A lot of the federal changes that occur are ones that you feel almost as a ripple effect. But the direct impact of what your local government is doing, you will see that, good or bad. And I think that is one of the things that is one of the lasting lessons I think College Park will have from this entire experience, is that it really does take a village.
Yeah.
And folks get that. That our engagement is high, and people understand their roles, and they understand that we are all advocates. Whether we have an elected position or not, we have a voice. And you use that voice at the voting booth, but you use it every single day to make your community better, because that's what we should do.
Right.
We are neighbors. And that's one other lesson. Like, oh my gosh, I knew my neighbors were great, but they're really great. My neighbors are awesome. This community is just so tight knit, and I can't imagine being anywhere else where we just have this sense that we're all here to take care of each other and support one another. And that has been really, really fun. And whether you are, I mean, I've seen engagement from a 9-year-old who got up and spoke about the importance of a rock wall to him, and the incredible courage that he showed using a step stool to make sure that his words were heard at public comment. And actually, a little girl even younger than him was doing the same. All the way up to 78, 79, 80-year-olds who have lived here for decades and want to see this place thrive.
Right.
It runs the gamut, but everyone has come to the table. And that, to me, is something really beautiful to see.
Yes. And across different races and cultures.
Absolutely.
As well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because we are not a monolith. And one of the things that I love about local government, and I say it a lot, but potholes don't have a party. We have, really liberal folks, we have really conservative folks, but they can come together for their community because there are certain things that all of us want. And I also believe that there are far more things that we agree upon than upon which we differ. That has been one of the disappointments that I've seen, this attempt at othering.
And what do you mean when you say that?
Divisions based upon just either pitting like the north side against the south side or different wards. I don't think it's productive for us, because one, if you ask anyone from outside of College Park where the ward lines are drawn, they won't be able to tell you. They probably won't be able to tell you how many wards we have. They probably won't be able to tell you which of my colleagues represents which ward. What they know is College Park. And if we are pitting wards against each other, if we are pitting sides of the city against each other, or saying we need to take something from one area so another area gets it, that doesn't make us better off in the long run. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday about how, actually it was another mayor, that I feel like some of our elected officials, and this is not a particular, it's not pointed at any particular individual. It's something that I've seen amongst just elected officials in general, that some people approach it with a scarcity mindset, that I've got to get mine to the exclusion of others. I haven't found that when we work together, that scarcity is the issue. Because when we think big, when we recognize that there is enough for all of us, if we are collective in our approach, we elevate. I need to make sure that I get this here to ensure that this group of people is taken care of. Like, if we think about the whole, I think we're overall better off. And also, you may have seen this at the meeting on Monday, because we were having a conversation about road paving, road maintenance, and I'd said that I would love for us to have an approach and have an objective method of determining the condition of our roads, so that we can actually hit the ones that are most in need of repair first.
Mm-hmm.
But that may not be equally spread across all wards. That would take buy-in from my colleagues to say, we're going to fix the biggest problems first, no matter where they are in the city. And that might mean that I get bypassed, or my ward gets bypassed in this first round.
Right.
But we're handling the things that need to be done on a city level and making that the priority.
Right.
I think that's where we should be. I can't say that's the view of everyone else.
Yeah.
I understand the other view, that it's important as someone who is elected in a particular area to bring resources to that area. Ultimately, though, in my mind, we sink or swim together.
Right. Right.
So if we have a particular ward that needs 75% of the road money because that is where the roads are worse, then let's get the work done. And because there will be something else that will be disproportionately impacting another ward. It to me,
it balances out.
It balances out in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen the point that you're making. I've seen that in other cities where residents might feel, I don't know if I saw it so much with the officials, but the residents had such a fear of losing what they had.
Yes.
So it was causing a separation.
Mm-hmm.
No, but years later now, I can see in the city that I'm thinking about that people are more coming together and there's more diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the residents' voices the higher voices do rise up.
Oh, sure.
And they're eventually, like you said, change does come. Change does come.
Absolutely. And we're going to be stronger for this. We already are.
Yeah.
We have more people that understand their roles.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing, because we all have a role to play. Well,
thank you. I really, really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
All right.